Philalitheia, and there are 3 hours left in the day, and I haven't earned my lunch. So here I am. Let me put you up here. And let's do another day. That mic is actually not on. Go back to the tent and take a couple of NyQuil and go to bed. Try to cover my head a little bit better tonight than I did last night. Chapstick either fell off into my backpack. I took it out. Voila, chapstick. My lips hurt too much. Just cope with it. Probably I'm also dehydrated. I also chewed the inside of my lips well, so I got 2 great big sores behind my canines on the sides of my lip. Something I learned from my mother. I don't have to be proud of it, but it is something I learned from my mother. Chew the inside of my lip until it bleeds. How are we doing today? It's so hard to believe that my tongue would step down. I guess we'll see what Pat McAfee has to say about Tomlin stepping down. Never had a losing season. I know what I'm gonna do. As you guys are making the smart choice, I'm going to do the not smart thing. I wrote this on February 11th, 2025. It was the final blog that I wrote as just a blog piece. Before I had fully and officially transitioned from, okay, journaling, keeping a log of my life and my thoughts isn't working. No one gives a shit. No one's going to read this. And when you read it for the channel, no one watches. So February 11th of 2025. I'm sat in the Muskingum County Library and I'm thinking about futility. Hello, Waffle. All of my artistic and intellectual work is wasted time. Not just in terms of my finances, but in every abstraction I return nothing. Not for my invested time, money, or effort. $25 a month, I suppose, but Madge, I love you. But you aren't paying me to keep writing. You're paying me so we're bound together. You know that, and I know I know that. Madge also knows I need the faith, even if it's an almost token subscription. The token keeps me moving. I've been thinking about tokens a lot lately. I make the bulk of my income by trading in-app currencies, tokens for PayPal gift cards. My life has become going to Chuck E. Cheese for profit. Tokens, though, they add up. And when you can trade them for useful currencies, a useful currency being defined here as an in-country token, you can trade for useful stuff. All that work, all that time and effort and tedium, and whatever else that went into gathering and collecting the tokens, it isn't wasted. That means on some level that the time spent, that the effort itself isn't futile. But is it virtuous to survive on $5 PayPal cards, gift cards? The question really is whether it's virtuous to spend money at all. I don't feel like persisting beyond what I've already written is any further worth my time. Take the riddle and figure out what I was thinking for yourself. You've had plenty of opportunity to know where my mind is going from paragraph to paragraph. Turns out, I was ever only here to take a shit and rub deodorant in my ass crack. That's the end of that one. Yesterday I was thinking about one of these that I was thinking about a specific line from one of these, and I went and looked for it, and then I didn't read from it. So you're hardly on the edge of your seat. What the hell? I thought this one might be a little bit too sensitive, given the title and the subject matter. But given the way my day has gone, hello, not Leah. Given the way my day has gone, this one seems perfect. Homelessness Journal, Monday, November 11th, 2024. Tedium as the suffering at the heart of life. If we're being honest with ourselves about why men get married, it's so they can use their cocks exactly the way they want. Today starts fun. All right, let's go, Vinny. The best I can tell, this is what the circumcision ritual is about. Oh, who thought you were making that connection? Not me, actually. Civilization at large seems to be a sorting out of what men are allowed to do to women. Which women, where, and under which circumstances. I ellipsate to a period. I was listening to a girl talk yesterday about a YouTube influencer who works on white poverty. She said he does video essays and stuff. But I'm bringing him up not because I think he's an idiot, I will establish that he is next, but because I think the way she described him is typical of the people dancing on my lawn. She said that he was a teacher, and it wasn't until he watched a documentary about white poverty that he realized how serious the problem is. What he realized, she said, is that he had contributed to the problem. by being a shitty teacher to poor white kids. You might ask yourself why there are so many fewer hot black women, even Latinas, in porn than white women. Do white women have a racial privilege in prostitution too? Don't be stupid. The answer used to be racism. The studios were racist, so the studs were racist, the audience were racist. You can watch the last 70 years of porn. Racism ain't it. It never was. A pretty, sexual, young minority never makes it to porn or prostitution. I used to hear old men say of pretty girls that someone needed to marry them to keep her off the pole. I haven't heard that idiom in a long time. It's a rude thing to say for sure, but there's wisdom in it. An over-sexual, sexy baby is a dime a dozen among white girls. You see it all the time. Interracial power imbalance marriages work because those girls expect to demean themselves sexually, one way or another. And usually the men come to really love and admire those women. But it starts at one word: no. They don't say no, except to be sexy. We talk about a woman's brain and sex organs, but that's inherently sexist. Transgenders prove that in myriad ways. I ellipsated. I've written about how we're not honest when we talk in the culture about marriage from a man's perspective. I sit in this Panera and I watch people. Lately, I've been watching women, which means I watch a lot of couples. Fewer, maybe, than you might think, but this isn't a hot date spot. It's no Roosters or Denny's, that's for sure. What that means is I'm not watching first dates, I'm watching established relationships. Husbands all have a 1,000-yard stare in here. Boyfriends, you can tell the boyfriends are just being polite. Polite, I've noticed, is what sexy babies as a class don't like. But all of this doesn't mean anything. Normative males are taught to be polite to females, maybe even to be indulgent, even long-suffering. But why? What's in it for him? You can watch boyfriends' interest wax and wane as their girlfriend's being pretty has diminishing returns. That really does mean that if she wants it all, she really is trying to do more than biologically necessary. All a human female is required to do in order to be biologically successful is be pretty and get pregnant a few times. The resources that requires determine, I think, the woman the girl will be. A woman does not have to be a cunning diplomat in order to be a good wife. Daughter-in-law is a different story. I'm telling you that remaining married in a power imbalance relationship is actually easy. We ask why we stay in abusive relationships. We know we're in abuse. We also know that the abuse is, on some level, our fault. We know better. But they had something we wanted. Maybe they still do. We know better than to let people treat us badly. But we also know how to exchange what they want for what we want. I do not know what men, especially young men and boys, want with girls. She's pretty, you have a biological imperative to fuck her. But the rest, the attention seeking, her father? The most organic way is to meet her through her father, or mother, because he wants you in the family, or she thinks she'd like to fuck you. Especially if daughter and parents have a developed relationship and actually like you. Ellipsation. It's about arousal. Women believe some wildly hateful and destructive things about men. Blatant misandry that's allowed because who's going to defend those men? None may be more damaging to men and the women's healthy lives than that men are always horny. This comes from a cynical combination of places, all of them stupid, honestly. It's hard to organize my thoughts around this. What I don't want to do is prove my point or points with story after story from my own life. That is tattling, and I'm not a tattletale. Relationships are a lot of work. Being single and looking as a female is not, to me, an enviable position. This kind of woman is basically a clutch of eggs looking for a place to roost. This is why males used to be expected to give her a key to their home, and she was expected to empty it of their stuff. See, watching her do that is how you fall in love with her. All of our complaints about marriage are moments where we're refusing to learn and in that way love our partners because we're holding out the contingent there's always someone else. This is why in the 90s women still complained that males are more desirable as they age and women are less. Now they just pretend all women are equally desirable at all times to all males. Well, what's being desired? Whores, real whores, not porn stars, know that what men want is to be stimulated. Men like to be intellectual with women too, and yeah, there's a biological reaction. That's why I'm always so disappointed when women are just and only dumb. Well, she's not attractive either. No matter what she looks like, I just haven't been able to get it up. I'd be thinking about how all I'm doing is using her for a midday nut, and that's just the worst possible kind of way to treat a woman. So I just avoid her. It's not ED, it's you. There is the thought that if we can talk about this, how rewarding and relaxed would the sex be? This is why poor women, especially, love smart men. I do not understand. No, I do. Men ruined it. We did. But mothers contributed. Feminism, then. Sexually normative females used to respond to males who gave them favors with sex touching, manual, oral, etc., but really just access to gaze upon their bodies. The sexual favor has all but died in modernity. Maybe you might say that casual sex replaced the sexual favor, but casual sex is just a woman being highly fucking annoying. It makes sense. Women used to warn girls to keep the exchange even, or he was taking advantage of her favor. So now they keep it one-sided, to themselves. She favors you. That's how it worked. You're her favorite. Old words. This means this stuff we're getting so wrong is ancient. Telecommunications are the equalizer, and men mostly, but people generally can't be discreet and can't just be smart. It's like the guy I'm arguing with yesterday about how women get mad at him for holding the door for them. Yeah, you leer and you put your body in the doorway, so they have to walk uncomfortably close to you so you can smell them and look down their blouses. Fuckface, that's not chivalry, that's rape. The difference in sexual favors and casual sex is dramatic. It's more than a maturation from a dandelion crown wearing girl sucking dick because that's what men want from women, to a sort of post-cynical acknowledgement that sex is about more than penetration and semen extraction. Lily Phillips. The idea, I think, in the transition was that women could be single household earners too. We don't need a man. I suspect, if I were to do the legwork, that men at the level of sexually normative males between the 1600s and the 1920s complained consistently that sexual favors only went to the top 1% and sexual athletes, not always different people by class. It's all confusing. There's probably nothing better than a girl asking you to pull your cock out because she wants to suck on it. Sex without having to initiate it is the very best, as a man, and a divorcee no less. The worst is initiating and being told you're always horny. It means she said no so many times in a row and has gone so long without returning your favoring her over a literal whore that you're no longer making an effort to earn favor at all. It's over when they say no and don't make it up to you. They don't want to manage you anymore. Before the 90s, a side piece was the answer. We can know this because of how feminism comes after whores, but not dancers or escorts or porn. There's a certain amount of countercultural oppositional defiance, and not many of the positions are well thought out or defended. But here I am again, having consumed more feminist literature than you. The common whore is a problem for every civilized woman. She makes, to begin with, an absurd hourly wage, but moreover, she does everything you say no to. After the 1500s, actually between the 1400s and the 1960s, women took not dying of an STD as a point of pride. It meant that they hadn't been risky in their sexual choices, and that if their husbands had frequented whores, they had not been so cheap as to be infected. You can no doubt remember what sex was like during COVID. Many women were more concerned with the COVID vaccine than with herpes. Moreover, the common whore is kind of living the liberal-minded woman's dreams? We aren't talking about the trashy whore with neglected children and a crippling drug habit. We aren't talking about the uncommon beauty. The internet has taught women that men hate to see even a below-average woman suffer, and will alleviate at least the poverty for her if she will give him some sexual favors. At least the poverty for her. That's what I meant to say. At least the poverty for her if she will give him sexual favors. See? Why is OnlyFans so successful? But really, what we like is to see poor girls smile. A woman's smile does something to our brains. I was telling Madge just today that not getting to see the pretty college girls at Christ's table had my whole day all fucked up yesterday. Actually, I think all of this comes down to changes in our brains and body chemistries that I think uniquely bothers women. It has to do with how much they hate hormones as an explanation for their choices and their feelings. I'm watching women bitch yesterday about how horny they are before, during, and after their periods. And it's like they literally don't know what their period is. It's literally like they think all that's happening is a little cramping and some bleeding. Like they think there's no biological utility tied to fertility. It's like they don't know that sex leads to pregnancy and birth. It's like they think that pregnancy is an act of spontaneous generation, like the baby in their womb is the maggots in the 18th century meat. Women are remarkably fucking stupid as a class. It's like y'all still literally believe that God punishes you or blesses you with a baby based on who you were fucking most recently. I find that strange. I know that women have been in competitions of self-control, both real and imaginary, maybe forever. I found evidence of it in the Christian church and the Bible. That this, philosophically, women's religion was quiet because women weren't allowed to publish, but it was about self-control. It was about keeping your legs together. Self-denial seems to be where consciousness begins for women. That sentence is more evidence that the behaviors we associate with religion and civilization are necessarily evolutionary female traits. So when Jesus says that Mary Magdalene is more man than any of them, he's right. If to be a man is to have religion in a civilized manner. Philipsation. I don't even know what to try to say about self-denial. I know it feels like boredom, and maybe that's really all I've ever been talking about. Tedium as suffering. I would rather be and doing it. I don't know what to think about that. I'm inclined to say that it's suffering. It's the suffering of the middle and upper class female, but she makes it male's problem in a variety of ways. Another advocation for segregation. Like, gyms should be gender segregated, for sure. I think segregation is the wrong answer. Women just need to learn to act right in public, is what it breaks down to. We've tried it, gender segregation, and it's always an expression of incompetence to manage a mixed population at scale. And that is an expression of ignorance of the lived experience of the people. And that's the end. God damn, I'm a good writer. I published this one on October 28th of 2024. I titled it Revelation, or I Found the Voice to Write Again. You be damned. I've read this one for the channel before, and I'll read it again. I realize, I wrote in October 28th, 2024, I realize in a new and surprising, to me, way nearly every day now that I've been homeless for 29 days, just how different I am from you, average user of the internet. Maybe once there was a place where people like me spent time online. I don't know. I never found it. But, come to think of it, I've never once seen Drizzed to Worden so much as mentioned online. well, by anyone but me. But this conversation I'm having with myself might end up an addenda to or another post entirely separate from this one. Maybe, probably. That's because I don't identify by the things I used to spend a lot of time doing. My Final Fantasy Let's Plays are a glaring counterexample. I will be exploring in another piece. The spirit is upon me. I have thoughts I wish to workshop and text, and you will be damned one way or the other, whatever I say. So I'm saying what I have to say, your redemption, irrespective. This is mine, after all, no matter how much you pay me. That means it's mine to intermittently destroy, to improve, as I so feel inclined. Inclined, I will so be again, and again, and again. Having now written in this piece that I do not identify with my past, I do bring myself to a critical impasse. I can ask whether that isn't because you never grew out of what you once liked to do, which begs a whole series of questions I lack answers to, and you won't cooperatively participate in this process to help me learn. Or I can turn the light of truth on myself and I can interrogate me, my ego, that lying liar. If I don't identify with my past, you might ask, if you were me, what with do I identify? Let's take a moment to meditate about question asking. Most questions are obvious, and in that way basic. The obvious question, any journalist will tell you, is your bread and butter, if what you want to be is consistently paid for asking questions. I do not want to be paid, not consistently, not at all, for asking questions. Questions are only the beginning of the process, and the people I speak to on the regular are too self-unaware to hold a conversation around the questions I want to ask. Just look what happens when I ask what I think are simple questions on Twitter. People pull the "I don't have an answer to this. I don't have to answer this" of the enlightened despot or the politician. It's actually hilarious how much people play king online. Significantly less hilarious how often they do so in retail establishments and fast food eateries. Their reason, though, unlike the politician or the criminal, isn't that they don't have to incriminate themselves. Better said, it isn't that they don't have to unmask themselves as too stupid to answer the question. Their reason is that they can't think that deeply and can't be asked to. Won't be asked to. Have never been willing to be asked to. And good for them. Good for you, if you pull that nonsense. You're too stupid to be here. You really should unsubscribe and spend your money on someone else. They'll lie to you about how much you actually are worth. I can't be asked. Not even for the equivalent daily income to a house and property taxes. Actually, it isn't even that I can't be asked, it's that I will not. Let's get back on track. I did draft this out before I began typing today. As usual, my thoughts are ahead of my essays. If I don't identify with my past, with what do I identify? Ellipsation. I don't think I know. I think that's why I wander so far off track. Donald Trump calls it the circle back. He criticizes the news media, the journalists, and the pundits because they can't listen to an answer long or well enough to realize that he's wandered from a straight answer to give you truth, then circle back to the answer in a way that will bring it home and make it memorable for the person who is actually listening. The circle back. I liked that a lot. I'm stealing it. He'll be dead soon enough anyway, and who really cares if I steal from Donald J. Trump? He's talking about seekers. He's talking when he circles around a topic only to double back on it. Two seekers. He's speaking the truth to you at an abstraction that you can understand it without either condescending to you or putting you or your nation at risk of speaking things he shouldn't in places and at times that he shouldn't. I think we all thought we were getting our first white trash president when Donald J. Trump was first elected. I think we expected security scandals like paperwork going into his home that shouldn't, and I don't think any of us was surprised when he was accused of doing such. I think we expected gaffes galore as he realized the job wasn't for him and he wasn't a good fit in the chair. But it turned out he's actually pretty good at it. Donald J. Trump has a mind that can learn. That's something. He can adapt and grow in office. That's new for American politics. Usually our politicians get worse at their jobs as greater responsibility is granted them. There are too many examples to get lost in the weeds. I'm circling around DJT because these things I'm saying about him I know are true. I don't know that what I'm going to say next is true. I use the circle back to demonstrate that even when I don't know what I'm saying or whether it's true, I do know what I'm talking about. Knowing what I'm talking about is better than you can do. So when I ask with what do I identify, the answer is I don't know. I certainly don't identify with Donald Trump. But I can recognize the circle back as a habit I've also developed, which means I can recognize something like what I identify with in DJT's influences. So I can recognize that he and I are similar people with similar interests. Interest is a word I'm not exploring in this piece, but will be soon. Soon. I think of myself as someone who loves fantasy novels and rom-coms. I like to snuggle on the couch with a girl who likes me, and I like to test myself against nature. I like to watch highly skilled people compete, and I like to wait at my seat until everyone else has filled their plate before I stand to get mine. But you wouldn't know any of that from my material. You wouldn't know any of that from what I think about, what I talk about. You couldn't come to get to know me, not quickly, by what I make and what I do. My actions and my thoughts are fully and totally incongruous. They don't line up. They're usually juxtaposed as polar opposites, mutually exclusive. But you wouldn't know that either if I weren't honest with you. You'd just think I'm weird and confusing. Because I am. But even as those things I think of myself doing are incongruous with who I am. The last fantasy novel I read was in 2021. It's October 24 at time of writing. The last rom-com I watched was in 2017 or 2018. The last time I snuggled on the couch with a girl who liked me was even before then, 2015 or 16. So I have to wonder about myself whether those things are even a small part of my personality, my identity. And I realize that my identity, that with which I identify, does not have to be my personality. I overthink things. What may be obvious to you isn't always obvious to me. This is one of those things. Your personality doesn't have to match your clothes. You don't have to fit in your skin. In fact, there's approaching a 100% certainty that you are significantly too big for your skin whenever is your time of reading. I have to fit my identity, or it isn't me. It's a person I'm pretending to be. I promised myself in high school that I'd never pretend to be anyone but a better version of who I am today. I have never broken that promise to myself, and I will never break it. Not for my ex-wife, not for any of the women I loved before or after her, not for all the heartbreak in the universe, not for nothing, not even for absolution, not even for conscious reunion with the source. Never. I don't make promises just to break them willy-nilly. I need a good reason, and pretending to be you just isn't a good enough reason. You aren't that fucking great. You're pretty neat. Maybe. Probably not, actually. The more you get to know you. But you aren't that fucking neat. These things that are true about my likes, my preferences, even my personality, they're irrelevant to you, as far as I am concerned, as a storyteller. I could insist on my personality. I could insist on many things. But the more I insist on any one thing, the more likely you are to know I'm insisting on myself. And I hyperlinked this. You can find my joke there if you want. Which I now realize you may not even understand why that's important, why you should know whether I'm insisting upon myself or not, and why it's bad to do it. I dost think I protest too much, indeed. See, I get this impression that you think you have to be dyed in the wool of old shit in order to understand old shit, but I spend my life doing things other than the things I prefer to do. I really do think if there's any one thing that makes me different from you, fundamentally so, it's that I have compunctions against doing what I would prefer to be doing. But I have no illusions that I will be doing anything else with the majority of my time. Life, as I say, is a ball of shit you either get to roll around in or which rolls over you. One way or the other, you come out of it covered in shit. Do you think Donald Trump really needs the shit slinging of politics? Shitty people don't mind getting covered in shit. That's true. But that finger points in every direction. If you're talking about presidential candidates. If Kamala is the unanimous party selection, she's covered in significantly more shit than DJT. He's not unanimous within GOP power circles. Populists never are. That's why you see so few populist politicians historically. Too few shitty people are willing to get covered in shit to say anything at all about the people at the bottom of the hill, where all of the shit has been rolling down. You know that idiom, don't you? Shit rolls downhill? You've seen the show, right? The Oblongs, I think it was called. You've seen that cartoon, right? The two-tier outhouse, where the top floor is the rich and the bottom floor is the poor. You know how outhouses didn't have plumbing. The point here is that exactly no one likes an outdated personal story. What's the point in telling a story about what I'm like that's actually years old? Do you like doing that? You haven't done it in 7 years. Yeah, well, time gets weird when you're in your 30s. It doesn't get 7 years weird. You don't just lose a decade when it comes to spending your time how you'd prefer. And that's true. Sort of. If I really liked fantasy novels and rom-coms, for example, if I really identified through those things, I would make the choices necessary to keep them a priority in my life. That's the definition of prioritizing them. But that's addict behavior. And I can tell you I spent my 20s doing anything but addict behavior, and my 30s finding the addict behaviors I like enough to actually identify around. So maybe it's that. Maybe I'm addicted to different things than you are, and because you've never tried my addictions, you don't get why I would be addicted to those things. I can get that. Not everyone is going to be willing to sleep in a tent in the Ohio winter. I know the church I attend, we're grateful I did not die last weekend. Several people asked me if I had adequate insulation and food, and they've only known I exist for maybe a few hours over the course of 4 weeks. Most of the people who expressed gratitude that I had not died last weekend, I chose to skip church because the pastor, who is the real reason I'm there at all, was on vacation with his wife. I had actually never spoken to before, but they knew my name and they cared that I was alive. That is literally more than I can say for all of the people who were and remain subscribed to this Patreon from before my homelessness. All but one. Madge, you know who you are. Certainly better at any moment than I do. Not a single one of you has checked in to see whether I'm not frostbitten. None of you actually cares. We used to read books because strangers and acquaintances alike could ask, "What you reading?" And a conversation could start. Chicks drawing attention to themselves by reading in public and being standoffish about the conversation, even in the 17th century, are about the same thing as chicks wearing camel toe pants and being upset about the attention. Women are going to be upset about what they're going to be upset about. Everyone is. But women identify with it. We've lost our way. That much I know. We want to be interesting now. We want to take an interest in people. We want, in other words, the conversation to imitate podcasting, instead of remembering that podcasting, especially conversational shows like Joe Rogan, are imitating life because they're art. You idiots. We want people to be as interesting as television and movie characters. In our hearts, it is what we want, what we lack. We know that real people aren't interesting at all. They have the same tedious, even boring lives that we do. Hell, I know that's why you all hate me so much. My life is instantly more interesting than yours. Even when it's literally spent podcasting to the future from a private room in a public library. Even when it's complaining about the guy who literally takes an hour to shit in the public bathroom of the public library. That's more interesting than your bullshit. Who cares what Karen from accounting is doing? There's a Karen in accounting doing the same dumb shit in every office building the worldwide. But instead of being happy for me that I found a way to be the storyteller I want to be, you hate me. It makes no sense. But I know I don't have to let it hold me back anymore. I don't have to seek out your approval. As soon as you sense that I am, you'll withhold it. Because you aren't paid well enough. Why should I be paid better? Because I am better. Hasn't that occurred to you yet? We know we only have to engage with real people insofar as they have something the people behind the screen can't give us. We know this. I would leave this to subtext if I could. I would have left almost all of this post to subtext if I could. If you were able to read subtext at all. If you weren't so dumb. That is what comes next. I do prefer to preserve your feelings. One of the things I identify with is the group. Harmony, then. Politeness. I would prefer to preserve your idiot worldview. But I can't. Not and be honest with you. Not and fix you. It does neither of us any good if I speak harsh truths you need to hear but aren't ready to integrate, fully expecting you to react badly. And also for you to then react badly. That is the exact reason my marriage failed. I couldn't come out communicate with my wife because she couldn't not react badly. This is why you believe I'm withholding from you. And what you believe I am withholding from you feels unfair to you. It feels unearned. The truth is that if I told you, it would do neither of us any good. You would lash out at me and unsubscribe, weaponizing your subscription, my favorite human behavior, weaponizing your consumerism, a trait I find deplorable in all its abstractions, and I will walk away from you until you apologize, Rachel. I wrote this more than a year ago, predicting your behavior today, which you will never do. Because you're stupid enough to identify with my sight, my foresight, my second sight, my hindsight with the enemy. It would be funny if it were happening to someone who deserved it. I want to tell you 3 stories. Think of this as an essay in 3 vignettes from my life, a demonstration of the non-linear narrative cycle of my life. My mother could never react to anything in the appropriate manner, not anything. And there's a response appropriate to every occasion, like Magic Shadow says about Hearthstone, and I agree with him. There's an appropriate play in Hearthstone for every round and every hand that will lead to a win. It's just up to the players to find it. Sometimes you do, sometimes they do. It's all in the cards, though. My mother was the middle child, and there's some secret trauma underlying all of her behaviors that I could, but which I will not unpack here. Suffice to say that as her eldest child, my brain is the most like hers as a child of my immediate family. I am realizing as I speak with more people my own age and younger that none of you knows even the basics of early human cognitive development, to say nothing of developmental psychology broadly. I don't think, in other words, that any of you knows how your brain is supposed to develop to and after adulthood. I don't think any of you knows just how much of you is a development, not out of a seed that requires no effort to bud into a full flower, but a barn which needs built, and from the ground up, and which will be assaulted by the elements of your life. You don't make anything only once unless you give up on making on Toto. Everything becomes an extension of the first thing you made, an expansion of the necessary skills to make it again. Our brains are still the brains of primates that figured out how to smash rocks together to make tools. Everything is tool making and tool use, and if you aren't making, you are using, and if you're not using, you're being used. That's what it is and how it works. That is what and how it is. Fucking cope already. This returns me to my introductory paragraph. Wheels turning within, turning wheels. I say all of this to this point to mean that for the savvy person, I've already told you everything you need to know in order to feel like you know my mother pretty well, actually. You know her tropes, and if you read more old novels, more old writing in general, with fewer overwritten, unbelievable characters, you would know that you don't need but one character trope to have a fully human person. Because my mother is a real person, not a mother in a novel. My mother is not a Dostoevsky character. My mother is not a Dickens character. My mother is a human person. Our relationship is not fraught, but hiding an inner redemption arc for her and me both as we come to understand one another. My mother is not the mother of some television show, long-suffering but ultimately harmless. There is not some fundamental miscommunication or misunderstanding which prevents us from truly connecting as adult human beings. The primary difference between my mother and the mothers you watch and read is that my mother is real. My mother was not focus grouped and overwritten until she had pathos and ethos for the average viewer, until she was relatable to other women, maybe even to women like her. No, my mother does not get these things because she does not deserve these things, because she does not have these things. My mother is not a three-dimensional person. Three-dimensional people only happen in books, or books are written about them. People like me, we don't have to talk about ourselves. You idiots are supposed to glorify us, but you wouldn't know the difference if I hit you in the face. Anyway, you hate me for my freedoms, for my liberty, for my generosity, and so did she. Because of who my mother was, she couldn't react appropriately, not to anything. She had to react inappropriately. It was a compulsion, because she hadn't developed out of that behavior as a child. It's just a phase. Parents used to say, yeah, spare the rod and ignore the child. It's never just a phase, it's always a budding pathology. Ignore it and pathologize the child. You can resist a compulsion. If you knew my mother like I do, you could watch her, thinking, how am I going to react inappropriately to this situation? Oh, to make it about me, definitely. She's the middle child of 3 girls. This behavior is as natural to middle children as a class of umbilical cords and amniotic fluids. Most, in other words, do grow out of it, with consistent correction and education. So the story, my mother wanted me to play an instrument. Drums were a no. I wanted to sing. I cared nothing for band, but my mother got what she desired, particularly from me, so I chose trumpet. It has the fewest moving parts without being a trombone. That was my thinking. So anyway, if you weren't in band, in 3rd through ninth grades, trumpet is the instrument the loud ADHD kids play, also the overachievers who will never earn mother's love. The ADHD kids are the way they are because mother was a little too lax in her love for a little too long, and the ADHD kids are intimidated by the overachievers, so they climbed all over me, the quiet kid who knows his parents will never feel love for him. Long story short, the ADHD kid dropped and broke my trumpet. He shouldn't have been holding it, but I was at yet another new school, and she told me to make friends at this one. At least try. I was nothing if not obedient. One of my parents would beat me if I weren't. It took me weeks, maybe months, to inform my parents. I really didn't want to. I didn't want the beating, that's for sure, but I was in 7th grade. I didn't want to explain that the only people to take an interest in me were the ADHD kids. You were no doubt an ADHD kid. Something approaching 85% of you were. If you weren't a prep, good chance you were medicated. Now it's autism and body dysphoria. When I was a kid, it was attention deficit and hyperactivity. I've always had the sense that the people educating and administering education are only doing so as a means to an end, and that they, none of them, never ever much liked children. The point is that there is a prestige, a pride, which comes with having normal, healthy children. That is why I never saw doctors before 8th grade, when the school was like, this kid's heart ain't quite right. I have a murmur, and that's why you had braces and all those surgeries and medications as a child. Your parents have no value if they aren't perfect. You'll inculcate that pathology and you'll design your babies as soon as designer babies hit the eugenic market. Whatever. You're too stupid to realize that making a girl prettier than her genetics guarantees she's in a lopsided marriage and hates her children. Because my mother reacted badly to everything, and my father, frankly, he and I didn't talk ever before I nearly died in 8th grade. I didn't say anything for a long time. A long time. When I did, I wrote it in a letter and slipped it into the mailbox. This isn't a treasured family memory. Do you remember that time? No, we've never spoken about it, not even to acknowledge it happened. Not any of it. The second and third stories I'm going to tell you are more sensitive, so I'm not going to detail these characters. My first wife, ex and only at time of writing. I assume there will be another 2 or 3 in the future, left me in large part because I told her to her face that she and I couldn't have adult conversations that worked toward the common goal of strengthening our relationship, because her only reaction to stress is to cry until I fix the problem myself. She reacted by crying, so I solved the problem myself. And lastly, reacting badly on purpose for the internal narrative you can tell yourself to make being interested in yourself at least as rewarding as the shows you pacify yourself with. The last woman I loved was a pathological liar. You can't fix 'em, boys. No one woman is worth the effort of trying. Believe me, this is a pattern for me very nearly 50 bitches long. I told her I knew she was cheating on me, so she brought him into the house where I had to know. You aren't better than this behavior. Hers. Certainly you aren't better than mine. And you can't relate to me. Suck it up. Sucking is what you do. As far as I can tell, it's all you do. From October 29, this is around the time that they threw those rocks through my tent. I titled this one, A Bold Claim. I didn't scream, I shouted. A bold claim. I don't spend my time how I did when I was a child. Strikes me as I read my words as the kind of line I would find objectionable if someone else said or wrote it. That is a bold claim, or so I would say. I would demand to know exactly how you think that tracks. If I have no means of interviewing you directly, inquisiting you really, I'm inquisitive. No one expects the Shaggy Inquisition. I would be engaging with your future material with the question in mind, how did you spend your time? How do you? I don't much, or I should say often, which is to say well or fondly, remember my childhood. My time was mostly spent at whims. By the time I was 9, my life was pretty busy. I had a brother in kindergarten to watch over, to get to and from school. I had books I wanted to have read, and a bike I wanted to be riding, and video games that could wait until long summer and Saturday nights to play. That's very real, actually. I got the idea from a book. I don't remember which one. I don't even remember whether it was a series. I just remember that the main character of the book, a boy around my age at time of reading, maybe he was older, stayed up long as he could, stayed up long as he felt like on Saturday nights, eating snacks and playing video games with his dog. I thought that was the coolest idea, and my mother allowed me basically that one thing. Saturdays after dark were mine, all for me. Sometimes my brother participated. I would rope him into binge watching the first Star Wars trilogy in one sitting. But for the most part, Saturdays were the day I tried to beat Final Fantasy VI, 3 in the States at the time. That's what the cartridge says. That's what the cartridge said. Who were we to know different back then? Television, as far as I was concerned, was entirely unreliable. Programming schedules and seasons were all but wholly inscrutable to me until I was very nearly in my 30s. TV, as an event, I was happy to miss. Movies were at least what was on the tape, usually, and seeing one in theater was certainly an event before COVID. I said with books, and an earlier piece, going to see a movie was a conversation piece. No one loves outdated information. Having watched an old movie on VHS was significantly less interesting, especially if it was a movie that had been in the cultural zeitgeist and which you missed. There was an old stand-up bit by a comedian I can't remember who talked about the De Niro Pacino flick, Heat, and trying to shoehorn into conversation that you'd finally gotten around to seeing it a decade later. No one even remembers that they cared about it at the time. Anyway, VHS movies were at least what was on the tape, usually. As they say, the tape don't lie, but people do. Labels lie all the time. But I mostly spent my childhood preparing myself to be an adult. Seems I haven't said exactly what I meant. If I push back on myself, I qualify my meaning. I don't spend my time how I did when I was a child. Is that so? Well, am I lying then? By no means. Is my story changing? By heavens, no. Did I mean a specific thing that was left largely to the imagination, but which also isn't universally true at every level of abstraction? Did I say something that was only true from a certain point of view? Is Obi-Wan Kenobi my favorite Star Wars character? Yeah. All of that stuff is probably true. Did I say then what I meant to say? Not even close. Is the manager at the GameStop I work at for a few weeks dead wrong that the first thing that comes out of our mouths is the truest? Absolutely. I rarely say the thing I most mean on my first try. I legitimately don't know who does. Trained orators, maybe. Prophets, maybe. But am I either of those things? I can't imagine you'd think I am if you've engaged with my work in a meaningful way. Maybe at the lowest level of abstraction, if I'm giving myself partial credit. I said what I meant to say, but I'm not giving myself partial credit. I never much did as a kid, either. Seems I wrote a counterfactual then. I do all the same things I did as a child, including being hypercritical in my self-consciousness and agonizing over every minute I spend not learning or developing a skill that I can make money with. That's called a talent, by the way. And that, as they say, is all I had to say this time. Seems I wrote a counterfactual. And it also seems that even counterfactuals, when they're spoken or written in good faith, are also teaching moments. Maybe next time I find the voice to write, I'll explain to you why even what you call failures, I call successes. Not everything is measured in wins and losses, but everything is measured in truth. And that's my work day. I'm gonna go back to the tent, find food on the way home, get some sleep. I wrote in this blog, in my Patreon, that women being so very fucking stupid force the men around them to defend and monitor their dignity for them because women are unaware of their dignity. So Rachel pushed me into a fucking corner where the only option that I have is to turn her off for 24 hours because she's so badly embarrassing herself. That my options are to take yet another loss to manage her dignity for her. It's pathetic. It's really hard to respect someone after you manage their dignity for them in public. You should eat my balls, Bing. I hope those of you who chose to sit and listen to that you don't think much has changed. I still think the same things. That's why the other day when I was reading this, I was going, wow, it's a real problem for me that I'm still thinking the same things a year later. I'm still saying the same sentences every time I go live that I was writing when I was journaling. That's a bad thing. That's extremely bad. That means that not only are my thoughts repetitive, cyclical, it means that my environment is cyclical. It means that nothing has materially changed for me. That before I meet you, I can predict your behavior a year in advance is a bad thing. Like, one of the things you would notice if you pay attention to my literature is that prophecies in my literature are something that you don't want to come true. Because if they came true, that means that somebody manufactured the prophecy coming true. If somebody's manufacturing it, then it's not from God. It's not truth. It's just somebody trying to force their will and their weakness onto the rest of the world. I don't know why you think I wouldn't stand against any one of you if you tried to do that to me. I will not fight you. It wouldn't be a fair fight. You wouldn't pay to watch Mike Tyson beat up a dog today anyway. We put Mike Vick in prison for it. Just wouldn't be a fair fight. Forward march. I am, if nothing else, my father's son. March on, toy soldier. Okay, let's get the fuck out of here. Alright, that's that. Alright. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you for the stimulating conversation. I'm really glad that we could have had this moment to get to know one another and to bond over ideas greater than ourselves. Thank you for taking the opportunity to expand your horizons. I hear this song every day, and there just really is not a more true, there just really is not a more true story of what human females are really like. If you find yourself out there saying dumb shit Devin said, be well.